Good out to you, Saints fans. Welcome into the offseason as your New Orleans Saints sadly did not make the playoffs, even though they finished with a winning record. So, we are going to spend today talking a lot about the coaching staff because, well, there's been a lot of coaching changes around the league, just not in New Orleans. Yay? Is that good? Is it bad? You decide. Dennis Allen is set as your head coach for 2024, even though Pete Carroll is stepping away from Seattle Seahawks. Bill Belichick, arguably the greatest head coach of all NFL time, and even Nick Saban retiring. What an end to a coaching era across multiple ways. Oh, let's not forget about Mike Vrabel. Oh, he's not the only one. A lot of coaching changes being made everywhere except New Orleans, but there is still the possibility. I don't know how you think. I don't know how you feel about this of the Saints offense adding John Gruden. So yeah, there's a lot going on. We're going to talk about that and so much more. And yeah, we'll see. And no, before anybody asks, the New Orleans Saints are not getting Bill Belichick. That's not happening. You are locked in on Dennis Allen. And I don't even say that like in a negative way. That's how it is. Let's get some who'd those here in the stream already. Mr. Dondre Bailey, Mr. Jerry, good to see you. Jimbo, Bruno, James Garfon, Derek Powell, Tay-Dot, good to see you. Charles Como Jr., Chemo Slice, Josh, Felix Grimm, Joe Payne, Trey Nelson, Eric Howard, 992 Rass, Preston Blom, everybody else. Who dat to you? Welcome on in. Eric Howard says other teams are making coaching changes of future Hall of Famers. Saints sitting around looking goofy. Eric, hey, think of it this way. I'm trying to give you some positives. Think of it this way, Eric. There are less quality coaches in the NFL now, so Dennis Allen has automatically ascended to being a better coach just by process of literal elimination. Hey, look at that. That's positive thinking. Don't you like it? Who doesn't love positivity? Oh, man. Oh, man. Good times. It's been wild on social media. Stop lying to myself. I ain't lying. That's just a fact. Like, if Dennis Allen was, in theory, the 28th best head coach in the NFL, and Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick are gone, well, then he's automatically 26th. That's just math. Come on, smile with me. Just smile with me, Eric. Put a big old grin across that chin. Do it for me. I know you got it in you. So, look, like most people who follow the Saints and even cover the Saints, I'm not exactly happy about Dennis Allen being the guy. I will give him credit for winning, 9-8. I will give him credit for having a winning season. I'll give him credit for being slightly better as a head coach. I still don't believe him as a head coach, and I'm not going to backtrack and suddenly believe him. I don't think he's the guy, but he is going to be the head coach in 2024. Now, I have seen quite a few people talking about the potential of this John Gruden coming in. For those that don't know or haven't heard, New Orleans Saints have met with John Gruden multiple times here recently, a 30-minute call like 3 weeks ago, and even one, we talked about a meeting here recently, right, towards the end of the season. And there is a possibility of him coming in as a potential consult / maybe co-offensive coordinator, something like that. And before anybody asks, because he does have that ongoing lawsuit with the NFL, I want to make two real quick points immediately. Number one, I am not commenting. I'm not agreeing with anything that he may or may not have said. Some of you have seen the emails. I'm not talking about John Gruden's character in terms of I think he's a great person. I'm simply acknowledging that while there's that legal baggage and while all those things are true, the New Orleans Saints are talking to him. And number two, him having an active lawsuit with the NFL does not preclude him from working for a team. Take a look at Brian Flores, who is employed and working, even though he's had legal issues with the NFL. So I don't want anybody to take, this whole John Gruden thing as me saying I support John Gruden here. In fact, I actually think that hiring John Gruden could be a mistake, even though I would agree John Gruden is a better play caller than Pete Carmichael, I don't think we're exactly taking a step in the right direction. If anything, it's a lateral move at best with potentially drama. So that is what it is. But if we're talking about what changes could be happening, well, that could kind of be happening. We talk about the potential changes happening to the New Orleans Saints when it comes to players. I mean, there's several that are probably going to be gone, right? And I'm not trying to say that in a negative way. There's just some people that are probably going to sadly end up going somewhere else this year. I think Jameis Winston is one of those. Jameis Winston will not be on the roster within the next couple weeks. He won't, because if he stays on the roster, all those pushback years they have signed him for, he gets like $107 million. So they're definitely going to cut him. That doesn't mean that he couldn't come back or have some type of extension made for him. It certainly could happen. I would say it's doubtful. And I will also say, and I don't care how controversial this is, I don't care how many people listen to this show after it posts on YouTube, I will say right now, Jameis Winston has been one of my favorite New Orleans Saints of all time. And I don't really care if y'all think that's stupid or you think that he didn't play enough or he doesn't deserve it. As a person, I love Jameis Winston, and he's been one of my favorite Saints of all time. But I do believe he's going to be somebody that isn't probably on the team next year. Regardless of his play, I just love what he is for the locker room. You saw just every player, everybody from freaking Derek Carr to Jimmy Graham and everybody in between, loved Winston and backed him on that team decision. So it will be sad to see him go. But here are, number one, let's talk about coaching. And number two, players real quick. Here are the players that I would like to see the New Orleans Saints prioritize bringing back who will be free agents. Number one, Rashid Shaheed. Now, he's in a very special type of restricted free agent. Basically, Rashid Shaheed stuck in New Orleans. There's almost no chance he goes anywhere. Now, you have regular free agents in Isaac Yiadom, Zach Bond, Ugo Amadi, Malcolm Roach, and Jonathan Abram, who I think the New Orleans Saints should make an effort to re-sign. And then there are also guys like Trey Turner, Adam Prentice, the fullback, Michael Thomas, and Jameis Winston, who I also think should have some type of conversation. So we'll see what they end up deciding to do, but that's kind of like the main list. Now, when it comes to coaching, there have been whispers and rumors and discussions and talking about, Pete Carmichael not necessarily either being here or having play calling duties. But again, none of that's locked in and guaranteed. So as we continue to move on from that, we talk about what can happen from the coaching staff. I think the biggest thing that can happen for the coaching staff is changes along not only the offensive line front, possibly getting a replacement for Doug Marrone, but also from a perspective of what can be effective to get this team over the hump. Cameron Jordan said it best. If y'all did not see his interview process, his exit interviews for the season, he talked about, look, you got to win 10 games to win and basically have a guaranteed shot at the playoffs. That means they're one win away. And I know very clearly that there is levels to that. Please, in the chat, don't go, well, this is a cakewalk schedule, blah, blah, blah. I get all that. That's not the point. The point is 10 wins. And would Gruden or somebody give them the ability to maybe get one or two more wins? Possibly. In fact, if you go by Patent Analytics, who uses FTN and Greer NFL data, they ranked Pete Carmichael as the third worst offensive play caller in the NFL at the end of the season. So I will go ahead and acknowledge this. If y'all don't remember, about 4 weeks ago, we used the same metrics, the same analytic sources who had him ranked dead last. The last month of the season raised him up a couple of ranks, so he finished better than Thomas Brown and Arthur Smith. But everybody else finished ahead of him, including Mike McDaniel, Matt LaFleur, Shane Steichen, Kyle Shanahan, Mike McCarthy. Yes, that Mike McCarthy. Press Taylor, Kevin O'Connell, Ben Johnson, Sean McVay, Shane Waldron, Eric Bieniemy, Kellen Moore, Todd Monken, Brian Johnson, Dave Canales, and Zach Taylor. Those were all the ones that got mostly positive grades as offensive play callers. So with Carmichael being at the bottom, I think it'd be really hard for the New Orleans Saints to deny the fact that he struggled in that area. You can say what you will about Derek Carr. Sure, he had his issues. You can say what you will about Michael Thomas, about the offensive line. All those things are discussions to be had. I think at this point, when you enter into the offseason, literally everybody has to go through a review process. How do they perform? Do they live up to expectations? And what do we do to make a change? Old Dirt McGirt says you don't bring Gruden in to consult the offense if they're planning to hire a new OC. What OC would take a job here knowing Gruden has a hand in the offense? And I agree with that, which it also kind of brings in the, well, what will they do? Right? Like when we talk about what will the New Orleans Saints do? I mean, my first thing is like, I look at guys like Shane Waldron, for example, in Seattle, or Bobby Slowick in Houston. And I think that the New Orleans Saints should try to find a way to get them first. But here's the problem. You cannot hire an offensive coordinator that's already an offensive coordinator without the team that currently pays them being able to block it, right? So Bobby Slowick being under contract, you can't just go poach their offensive coordinator. There are rules against that in the NFL. So if you're going to replace the offensive coordinator, it needs to be somebody that's available or somebody that you're promoting. Say somebody that's in the position of Ronald Curry, who's a passing game coordinator. You can go promote somebody that's a passing game coordinator for another team and make them your offensive coordinator as long as you get rid of Pete Carmichael. If you bring in John Gruden to essentially be a co-offensive coordinator, and remember the New Orleans Saints did have co-defensive coordinators for a short period of time. It is possible. Then you could have two offensive coordinators between Carmichael and Gruden, where one maybe focuses more on game planning, Carmichael, and the other more on play calling and game situations, Gruden. But if you did that, you're definitely not getting a young buck to come here and be the OC. So if you are a coaching staff that is a little incomplete, at least we feel like it is, and you're a fan base, these are what you have to like look forward to. You know, what are the possibilities? What it is. And Don says bringing in Gruden will just be a part of doubling down on Carr. And let me take that statement that you just said, Mr. Don, because we've always been a chat-centric podcast. We want the voices of the fans to matter. I actually would agree with that move. Here's why. Real quick. I want to agree with that move. Here's why. Derek Carr is your quarterback in 2024, no matter what, right? Assuming he doesn't get hurt. So doubling down on Carr to try to make him as effective as possible in 2024 is actually not something that I would say is a bad idea. You can still move on from all three of them after 2024, but if you are talking about what could possibly make Derek Carr the most effective quarterback he can be next year, it actually makes sense. And I'm not even saying I agree with it, but I am saying that, look, you are stuck with Derek Carr being your OC. I'm sorry, being your QB. He's going to be your QB. So then you need to do whatever you can to make him as good of a QB as you can, because there is no other option. Now, I know, like, as a fan, it's easy for us to say, well, let's just change it. Well, they can't. They can't change it after year two of the contract. I think Mickey did a great job with Derek Carr's contract, but nobody signs a veteran contract like Derek Carr and signs him to a one-year deal. It's a 2-year deal with a potential third year, or they can get out after 2. I love the Derek Carr contract, but at the same time, we'll see how long it lasts. Short answer to what I'm saying. And then we also know that no matter, regardless of who's available, they're not moving on from Dennis Allen, which eliminates guys like Vrabel from coming in, right? Vrabel's not coming here. You know, you're not getting Bill Belichick here. So as a Saints fan, you're limited in what you can really do. Now, Mike, good to see you, says Saints fans want Daniels in the draft, and I got to tell them, heck no. We've hedged our bet on Carr and need to work on making him the best he can be. I think the New Orleans Saints can draft a quarterback and still work on Derek Carr. I think that's fine. I just don't think Jaden Daniels fits how New Orleans currently is designed. But here's the biggest kicker. I don't believe the New Orleans coaching staff is good enough to train Jaden Daniels to be what he can be, there are places that I believe can train Jaden Daniels to be what he can be, right? So the reason I don't want the Saints to draft Jaden Daniels is he doesn't fit already, and I don't trust this coaching staff to make him fit. Whereas there are other places that I think can make Jaden Daniels a fantastic NFL quarterback. I just don't believe in the New Orleans Saints coaching staff. And that's no offense to Ronald Curry, the passing game coordinator and QB coach. That's just me being honest. So as a Saints fan, we have to figure out, well, what moves can they make that are realistic moves, you know? And realistically, you're not going to get these Hall of Fame coaches that are being cut. Like, that's just not going to happen. Like Pete Carroll, is staying with Seattle. He's becoming a consultant. And you've got Bill Belichick, but Bill Belichick literally was GM and head coach. And I promise you, Mickey Loomis is not moving over for Bill Belichick. So that's completely out of the wash anyway. So you have to look at it from a perspective of what can they realistically do to improve this team. And that's not the most exciting moves. Now, Old Dirt says, I think there's a 0% chance they draft a quarterback unless he's a late round project. So, Old, from what I have heard, it ain't 0%. At the same time, I'm not telling you that quarterback is the number one position of focus going into the draft, but I will tell you, from what I understand, it's not 0% either. So take that for what it is with a grain of salt. It's freaking January, so don't take any draft advice in January as solid gold. So, are we looking at another year of mediocrity given that we didn't do well in every possible favorable situation last season? Weak schedule, division, healthy players for the most part. I'll say this. I'm not even saying this to defend Dennis Allen or anybody else. Every single season, every NFL team is different than they were the year before. And each NFL team has the ability to ascend and descend. But the key is, as a fan of one team, you are a fan of the New Orleans Saints, please remember, that's not how it works just for us. It's everybody. Everybody. Sorry that they get out of your car and waved you down so we can scrap, but you just put your head down and act like you couldn't see me. Bro, I have not driven a car in probably 6 days, so it wasn't me. Not all gingers look alike, my friend. Not all gingers look alike. Also, I wouldn't scrap. Anybody that follows Who That Confessional knows I don't scrap. I just pop it. 9 on my right, 45 on my other hand. Do you honestly see Allen getting fired halfway through the next season and they blow it up? Nope, I do not see that. For that to happen, the New Orleans Saints would have to go 4-13. I don't see Dennis Allen getting fired halfway through the season. And I have seen, because social media is an amazingly fun place to be, I have seen people talk about, hey, they're going to bring in John Gruden to be co-offensive coordinator, only to fire Dennis Allen halfway through the season and promote John Gruden to head coach. I don't think that's the plan. I don't think that's a thing. So, yeah, I don't think that's a thing. I think that Mickey Loomis, good or bad, believes in what DA has done. And you've already seen it. Let me quote Nick Underhill real quick for you, okay? Because Nick Underhill got asked this question. And if y'all remember, I said what he said several weeks ago. Y'all asked, what is this team? Remember when y'all were here and y'all asked, what is this team going to try to sell us after the end of the season? Well, let me go ahead and tell you. So, Courtesy asked Nick Underhill this question. What's keeping DA from getting fired? I don't know if you know this, how the Saints front office runs. And here was Nick Underhill's quote. And tell me if you've heard this somewhere before. If you're asking how they run and how they think, the New Orleans Saints front office, they're thinking that they won 9 games and had a winning record. Does that sound familiar? That's how Mickey Loomis looks at this situation. Now, every one of you who are listening live or listening after the fact can scream that that is ridiculous and stupid and say that they are blind to the facts. But that doesn't change. That's how they look at the situation. They look at this and truly believe we were 1 game away. We are this close. We have the people in the building. That is how they think. That doesn't mean that we have to agree with how they think, but that is how they think. Do I believe that a team led by Dennis Allen can get into the playoffs? I do. Do I believe a team led by Dennis Allen can win a Super Bowl? Absolutely not. I do not. I believe that a roster can be talented enough to make it into the playoffs, irregardless of the ability of the coach to be a head coach. But I believe that you have to have a special culture to win a Super Bowl. I truly believe that. The 2009 Saints had a special culture as well as a great head coach and an amazing roster. So I don't believe in DA as a head coach. I've said that many times. Do I believe that they could make it to the playoffs as like this year they were literally like another blown lead from doing it? This year it was losing a 17-0 lead against Tampa. Last year, it was literally 1 yard away from doing it against Green Bay this year, Tampa Bay this year. Reverse that. You know what I mean? I do believe that this team can do it, but that doesn't mean I believe in DA. So this front office looks at the facts and sees that DA has had his best season ever as a head coach. They look at the facts and see that they had a winning record. And they look at the facts that the rest of their opponents in the division have no long-term answers, just like the New Orleans Saints don't. Tampa does not have a long-term answer. Atlanta does not have a long-term answer. Carolina does not have a long-term answer. So love it or hate it, the NFC South is just as much up for grabs in 2024 as it is in 2023. And I hate to really because it almost sounds like I'm defending Dennis Allen, but I'm not. I really believe what I believe about DA, and I don't believe in him as a head coach. But at the same time, can this team make the playoffs in 2024? Absolutely. Why? Because the NFC South, Carolina does not have a head coach or a quarterback they really believe in yet. And I don't think that's Bryce Young's fault. I think that's Tepper's fault. That's got to be one of the worst owners in the league. He's like a young Jerry Jones. You've got Atlanta, just fired their head coach, have no answer at quarterback. And then you got Tampa, who's currently relying on Baker Mayfield / maybe Kyle Trask, and Baker Mayfield is a consistent guy who's inconsistent. Sound familiar? There is nobody in the NFC South as it sits January 11th, 2024, that anybody should believe in, including New Orleans. So it's not just New Orleans that's struggle busing, it's the entire division. So this roster, if it were to improve, and if you brought in things to make some of the players you have be better, can still win. The sad part of that is that means that we would be stuck in the slightly above average mediocrity of Dennis Allen and company, because I do not believe in the pit of my soul that Dennis Allen leads any team to a Super Bowl. I just don't. I do not believe it. I believe Dennis Allen could be a defensive coordinator for a team that goes to the Super Bowl. I do not believe he'll be the head coach that takes a team to the Super Bowl ever. I just don't. So, Mike says, I could live with DA in this season if things didn't seem so grim culturally. Dude has zero energy and looks bored all the time. Talking to the press about this team, show some love. My biggest issue, Mike, if I'm just being honest, is there is a clear disconnect between the culture of the locker room and the culture of the coaching staff. Very, very wide divide. The fact that all the players came to the defense of Jameis Winston and all of them said, yeah, getting Jamal Williams a touchdown was the right call. All this. Even if you disagree with it, because I know some people disagree with a running for a touchdown out of victory formation. That's not the point. The point is DA went to the podium, threw his players under the bus to apologize to a division rival, which only further proves that there is a coach, team, and they're not on the same page. And I'm not trying to trash talk either one of them, but that's what worries me the most, is that this team is not unified, right? So we need to do remember the Titans and go make their ass run through Gettysburg or whatever. I don't care, but something needs to change in a cultural aspect for you to be able to believe in this team. Maybe something happens that makes that happen. I don't know. But y'all have great questions. Joe says, I don't think the Saints have any chance of being significantly better until 2025. That's possibly true, Joe. I mean, I'm not clairvoyant. I'm not Revadamus. I can't see that far in the future. You could be right. You could be wrong. I don't know. But I can say this, that whether we want to admit it or not, the 2024 Saints can be better than the 2023 Saints. I just don't think they can be much better. I don't think they can be Super Bowl better. But the big key is, can the Saints win the division next year? And if you say no, you're just being disingenuous because you hate DA or you hate Derek Carr or you hate Mickey Loomis. You cannot look at this division and go, the Saints have no shot. You just can't. So with that in mind, you play and see how it goes. Now, we'll see. King says, outside the obvious firing of DA and PC, what would happen in your opinion for us to be serious contenders for a chip this upcoming season? I'm just going to be honest, King Arthur. I cannot say anything that I would truly believe that I can't say anything that puts them as Super Bowl contenders in my book. Because for me, teams that can win a Super Bowl have a culture. That's not this team. That doesn't mean this team can't win games. Doesn't even mean that I don't believe this team can't win the division. But I don't believe this team has the culture between the players, the locker room, the front office. And Sean Payton used to talk about this all the time, having everybody on the same page, everybody being one group, everybody being one word, one together, everybody bringing the wood. That was a big thing with him, making sure that everybody was right on the same wavelength. I don't think that's going to happen under DA, because I think if you were going to see it, you would have seen it after 2 years so far. Just like you didn't see it with Matt Rule in Carolina. You're not seeing it with Dennis Allen in New Orleans. I don't think that's going to change. I still think that they can win the division, but that doesn't mean that I think they could be a contender. And of all the draft picks they could end up with this year, because they get every compensation pick that is possible, I think they can end up with 8 draft picks if they got every comp possible. Let me verify real quick. Give me 1 second. So if they get every comp that is projected to them, they would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If they got every comp pick that is projected, they would have 9. I don't necessarily know if they're going to end up with that. We'll see how those get rolled out, but 9. Of those 9 picks, I do not believe that you could draft enough studs, especially because you've only got 2 picks in the top 50. You've actually only got 2 picks in the top 100. I don't think you can draft enough high-quality talent to just make this team be so good on the field it supersedes the coaching staff's limitations. So sorry, King Arthur, I don't think anything can happen that makes them a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I still think they can win the division. I still think they get any higher than that. And Derek brings up that, Kai Harley is getting interviewed for GM positions. I mean, for me, I believe that New Orleans should, this is for Ms. Gale, I believe that Mickey Loomis should get promoted to a permanent presidential position and Kai Harley should be the GM. Like, keep Mickey around. Give him some type of title and promotion. But it's time for him to stop being the general manager. Time to stop being the general manager. I don't know if they'll do that, but that's what I would say. That's what I would say. It's time for him to move on. But I think we have that opinion about a lot of things this year. I mean, do we not have that opinion about DA? But that's not going to happen. So we'll see. We'll just have to wait and see. Sorry, I had motion in my front door and I'm making sure there ain't nothing out there. It's been really, obviously, y'all been going through the weather like I have. So probably was just the weather. All right. We are stuck with Allen, but damn it, Vrabel would be a perfect fit. He's the type of guy veteran leaders would get behind. I'll say this, Old Dirt. Vrabel is definitely a coach that players can easily rally behind. I agree with you on that. But here's the only thing. Unless you can somehow convince Dennis Allen to be demoted to a defensive coordinator, I think bringing in Vrabel would actually hurt the team. Here's why. Any coach that comes in like that usually wipes the slate and hires a whole new staff. Well, the one thing that is holding this team together is the fact that they do have a decent damn defense. I don't think Vrabel's the answer. You would have to blow up everything that you have that is actually good. And then hope that the defense works with Vrabel. And I don't have anything against Vrabel. I'm just saying that I don't think that helps the team this year. So you could make a legitimate argument that it helps it long term. And I think that's a completely fine argument. But again, we're talking about things that won't happen, right? Like, we know this team's not going to fire Dennis Allen. And I think, if anything, this has made me sour to the idea of defensive-minded head coaches in today's NFL. Now, there are exceptions to that rule. An exception to that rule, Mr. Don, is DeMeco Ryans. DeMeco Ryans and Bobby Slowick as his OC are leading the Houston Texans into the playoffs. So there are exceptions to that rule, but I mean, generally speaking, man, I kind of want an offensive coach, offensive head coach, that is. So, and if you brought in Vrabel, you would lose a lot of that while still having a defensive coach. We're concerned about our key players inevitably asking out of New Orleans if this continues. If so, do you think it's a reflection of DA destroying the culture of the team? Good question. That's actually a good question, King. Am I worried about players trying to get out? Yes. Do I think that's an issue at the moment? Probably not. But I'd also argue, and I'm not trying to say this in a jerk way to the Saints players, for a long time, the Saints have been living off something that's been dead for a while. Here's what I mean by that. The last time that the New Orleans Saints were like legit, like the Saints themselves were legit, like Super Bowl level contenders, was probably 2018. Now, they still made the playoffs in 2019, 2020. So you can argue those 2 years if you want to. But I would say that 2018 was the peak and it started going down in 2019 and 2020. They were still really, really good in 2019. They were. But I think the peak of that winning culture was 2018. And you're still high at 2019, 2020, but it's just steadily going down. And I think they're living off the 2017 through 2020 culture. But that's been gone a long time. That's been gone a long time. I would not argue. I don't think 2020 is better than 2018, Jay. I think 2018 was far superior to 2020. But I don't really care. Like, if you do, that's completely okay. Either way, 2017, 2020 was a winning culture. Okay, but that was 4 years ago now. And this team is still living off of that. I think this team needs to move on from that. No offense to Ryan Ramczyk, who we don't know because of his injury what he's going to be this year. Right? 2020 defensively culture was born to you? Oh, dude, the 2018 defense was freaking great. 2018 defense was great too. 2020, for sure, great defense. No lies told. But 2018 is the year that we got Demario Davis. That's when the defensive culture was created, in my opinion. 2018 and Demario Davis and Cameron Jordan in 2019 did the fusion dance and created a defensive culture. 2018 is when that started. 2018, that defense gave up 350 points. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. By comparison, 2011 defense gave up 339. I'm not griping about that. Could it have been better? Sure, absolutely. But that's when that culture was created. But anyway, we're getting distracted. My point is, I think the Saints, front office, players, coaching staff, are living off of a dead culture. And that culture died after 2020, right? I know that, Breeze retiring is part of that. Peyton leaving is part of that, and he left in 2021. But that culture died after 2020, right? And yet I feel like this roster still lives like that was how they still are, or they live like that's how they still are. And that's just not the case, right? Now, King says, if players ask out of New Orleans, do you think it could be a domino effect in terms of free agents steering clear of New Orleans simply because of DA? Unlikely, because one thing that players want more than anything, money. A lot of people think it's Super Bowls. And yeah, some guys want to win a Super Bowl. But you know what most people want in the NFL? Because it's their job? Money. So I don't think it would steer things that clear. No. Do I think that you might have a guy who chooses somewhere else if he has equal offers? Or maybe an aging veteran might go for the ring? Sure. That can definitely happen. But generally speaking, do I think that most free agents would be turned off by New Orleans? I don't. Because look where Jesse Bates went. Jesse Bates was coming off of a Super Bowl team with the Cincinnati Bengals, and he went to Atlanta. Why? Money, money, money. Von Bell went to the Carolina Panthers. Like, at the end of the day, these men are doing this as their job. So wherever the check is and it ain't bouncing, that's where they're going. So I get what you're saying, though. And I do think there are cases where that can happen. I think there are cases where that can happen. But do I think it's going to be a widespread problem? No. At the same time, I've talked about this before. I don't think that there are many good offensive coordinators out there that want to come work for Dennis Allen. If you want to worry about what I think Dennis Allen affects this team the most in terms of like bringing people in, I think he prevents good young coaches from coming here. You know why? Because they look and see that this man's a losing coach, with the exception of this year. I think how DA hurts this team is nobody wants to come work for him, and his circle of coaches are a bunch of old guys. He didn't recruit Ryan Nielsen, who's now the DC of Atlanta. He didn't even recruit most of the offensive coaching staff that we have. He didn't do none of that. The guys that he's bringing in are like old 400 years old Doug Marrone and Woods. And I honestly don't I don't really have any issue with DC Woods. I'm just saying that like DA is not recruiting these young up and coming talents and doing things that Sean Payton did. And I hate that we always bring up Sean Payton, but look, as awful as he was to us in his final year, Sean Payton did a lot of damn things right. And there's a reason that Sean Payton's tree is growing, right? There's a reason that people from Sean Payton's tree are going out having success. Who's coming here for DA? Because people will go for Sean Payton. Who's coming for DA? I don't think anybody's coming for DA. So that's one of the things that always entices me about New Orleans is good and bad. You're going to get paid, and really you're probably going to get a big signing bonus. Probably true. Don says, I saw when Amy Trask said the other day about Dennis Allen when he was with the Raiders, and it's very troubling. I didn't catch what that was, Mr. Don. Feel free to share. Feel free to share. And Joe is right. Miss Gale is very willing to sign bonus checks. Like she's not being parsimonious with the money. So that's one thing that can make a player very attracted to New Orleans, knowing that they're going to get here and that signing check ain't going to bounce. Because there are other teams in the league, like Cincinnati has been notoriously known for 40 years, about 20 years, not being willing to spend as much money. So there's a pro there. He's an old school guy with no new thoughts. He brought in an old quarterback. Who are we talking about, Jay? We talking about DA? DA? Ted says DA sold out his players. He's not a stand-up guy. Character means everything. See, I agree. Like, even if you disagree, and I mean this, like, because I fully support running it out of victory formation. I do. I 100% am okay with you disagreeing with me on that and saying that was messed up. But even if you agree or disagree with me, a head coach should have backed his players. Full stop. He should not have gone straight to the podium, and the first thing he did was sell out his players and apologize to his division rival. I don't care whether you agree with me about the victory formation or disagree with me. I'm okay with that. But what I want you to do is agree with me on one thing. You do not run to the daggum podium, throw your players under the bus, and apologize to your division rival. You do not do that. You do not do that. Like, he wasn't even asked about it. The man literally just says, I'm going to open up by saying this. That to me is more egregious than any victory formation run. And maybe that's just my opinion. But it also is the man that is here regardless of whether you want him to be or not. But to me, as a Saints fan, like fan first, analyst second, that's a fireable offense. I think you should run the score up on Atlanta no matter how many opportunities you get. And if your players do something you disagreed with, like if you told, I'll go ahead and give my opinion that you're not asking for because you're listening to my show, so clearly you're asking my opinion. If he had an issue with Winston and the team for doing that, you know where you handle that? In the locker room with the door closed. And I'll be honest, I don't care if you get in their face and scream at them because you were so pissed off about it. You do it behind closed doors in your family, and you don't do it in front of the media. It's like, I really don't care. If you if you're Ed Williams or you're Shannon Sharp and you think that it was complete that they were out here doing runs out of victory formation, fine. Don't go sell the team down the river at the podium. If you want to go get mad at them, go do it in the damn locker room. That's just how I feel. Anyway, Old Madur says you should watch that interview with the old Raiders GM. Do not hold back, talking about DA's lack of leadership. Amy Trask is amazing, and she's actually very interactive on Twitter, but I hadn't seen that interview. Here's a question for DA. You okay with throwing your players on the bus? You okay with players throwing coach on the bus? And even if you are, you're not the leader you should be. I agree. Waiting on you to put out a NOLA uni concept that incorporates more gold in the jersey. Also, Jameis is likely gone. So who do we replace him with considering Carr gets hurt so often? The guy you drafted in Jake Haener. And here's the good thing. Jake Haener is cheap. Cheap, 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 cheap. Cheap, cheap, cheap. Cheap, 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 cheap. Now, Ted, I agree with that too. Like, Sean would have done it. Now, Sean also wouldn't have called victory formation. Sean also wouldn't have had his backup quarterback run out there in victory formation. That's still weird to me too. And that's something that I don't feel like got talked about enough. Why in the last play of the game in victory formation did you send out Jameis Winston anyway? Were you giving him a pity snap? Why did you send him to the 1 yard line on victory formation anyway? Why didn't you send Derek Carr out? It doesn't make any sense to me. What are you worried that they're going to hurt Derek Carr? Anyway. Sorry. I've gotten on several tangents tonight. And the truth is, y'all probably going to hear several more of them because DA is going to be your head coach next year. So, we'll see. You missed the Sean pettiness? Me too, man. Me too. You really don't like DA? I don't either, Chemo. Well, let me say this. Because I do think that DA is a good defensive coordinator. And I will also add this. And I've said this all year. I do not have the sources that I used to. I do not talk to as many players as I used to. I do not talk to as many coaches as I used to. The players do not not respect DA as a person. Put it that way. That doesn't mean they respect him as a head coach. But as a person, let me be very clear, none of this is personal about DA as a human being. It's him as a head coach. I do not think that he is a leader of men. And I've said that many times on this show. But I do want to add that no player has ever said anything about him as a human being. But I don't think that anybody believes him as a head coach. So, who wants a ticket for the Titanic? Man, I heard they got a fantastic orchestra. Thoughts on Cam at this point in his career being a starter next year? I think that he should be a starter, and on third downs, he should be replaced with a pass rusher. He should be replaced with a pass rusher. He's a mid-defensive coach? I wouldn't say that, Jay. Dennis Allen is not a mid-defensive coach. I mean, that's just disingenuous. He's definitely much better than a mid-defensive coach. Would I say that he's the best defensive coach in the NFL? No. But as someone who has studied every snap of the New Orleans Saints for, God, what's it been? 8 seasons? 7 seasons? He's a very good defensive coordinator. But that doesn't make you a great head coach. It doesn't make you a great head coach. So, what is your ideal draft in terms of players we can get round by round? It's a good question. I've actually already started doing some of my watch throughs, so hopefully y'all are going to enjoy that. We're going to do some scouting reports and stuff this year. I feel like the biggest thing this team needs to focus on is offensive and defensive line. And I know people are probably going to hate to hear that because we've drafted 3 defensive ends in like the past 4 years. But I really feel like they need a defensive end really, really badly. They need a pass rusher really, really badly. And I wish that they would get off their high horse and stop worrying about a specific prototype so damn much and actually just focus on rushing the passer. But they also need to focus on offensive tackle as well. I think they need to focus on the trenches. I think they need to focus on the trenches quite a bit. So that's a big one. That's a big one. Nick Saldiveri is a big question, Jay. Like, I was very excited about Saldiveri coming in. I enjoyed watching him in college, and he has the history and the versatility to play multiple positions, but he can also be that right tackle if Ryan Ramczyk, can't be that guy. So we'll just have to wait and see. Let me get more watch hours in. But what I plan on doing is I plan on doing several mock drafts with y'all. If y'all remember how we did last year, we would just put the mock draft simulator on and we would talk about those guys together. And we would read profiles together from other scouts about what they thought. And if I had studied them, we talk about what I thought. So we'll just have to check it and see. Because somebody in the chat earlier had already mentioned Chop Robinson. The only issue with Chop Robinson is he doesn't fit Sean Payton. He doesn't fit Dennis Allen. I like Chop. But you know what Chop is? Zach Baum. You know what I mean when I'm saying that, right? Hopefully you know what I mean when I'm saying. Do I need to explain it? I guess I should explain it. Okay. What I mean by that is he is a premier edge rusher who doesn't have traditional defensive end size, but literally has great pass rush ability off the edge. Last time New Orleans had that opportunity, they tried to make that guy into an off-ball linebacker. Zach Baum. So you say re-sign Pete to be a stopgap at LT. Here's the thing. Even if you re-sign Anders Pete, which I have no issue with, he cannot be your left tackle. Here's why. Name me the season Anders Pete played 17 games. Name me the season he played 16 games. You can't. Didn't happen. Now, this is not me talking negatively about him as a player. What I'm saying is you cannot re-sign Anders Pete and he is your starter at left tackle because that still doesn't answer your question because he's going to have to be played by somebody else. Now, fun fact about Anders Pete this year, he was healthy for 16 games, but he only started 12. Fun fact about Anders Pete, he actually was available for 16 games, but he only started 12. I give Anders Pete credit for being a very good player at 30 years old, better than people expected him to be at left tackle. But you can't expect him to be a consistent guy. We're talking about an Anders Pete who rookie year played 12 games, who his first Pro Bowl year was 13. His next Pro Bowl year was 10. His next Pro Bowl year was 13. And then 2021, he played 6 games. And this is not like a jerk saying to Pete. I'm simply saying that you can re-sign Pete, but it doesn't answer your question on the offensive line. It helps, and it gives you a depth that you can be semi-confident in, but it can't be the answer, is what I'm saying. He can be part of the answer, but he can't be the answer. Right? You're going to have to do more than just Anders Pete. Right? Now, Tragic says, name me the season Ramczyk played 17 games. Well, technically that's never happened, but we've only been doing 17 games for 2 years. But has Ryan Ramczyk played 16-game seasons? Yes. In fact, Ryan Ramczyk has played 4 16-game seasons and 1 15-game season. He's actually only had 2 years where he was really injured. So, and thank you, Kevin Procco, for supporting the channel. I greatly appreciate you. Very, very kind of you. So I don't give Ryan Ramczyk the same level of like, dang, it sucks that he gets injured as I do Anders Pete. Because Anders Pete literally gets injured every season. Now, I don't blame him for that. Players can't control whether they get injured, but he's just a guy that gets injured. Ryan Ramczyk doesn't have that history, though it does seem like he suffered really badly this year with that. So, all I'm saying is, sure, re-sign Anders Pete to a really cheap deal. I'm okay with it, but he cannot be the answer. If you go into training camp and the only options you have at left tackle are Anders Pete and Trevor Penning, that's scary. That's scary. Right? That's scary. Could you not talk to Cam? Are you asking me, could I talk to Cameron Jordan? I mean, I could reach out to Cameron Jordan, I guess. That's what you're asking. I mean, I could reach out to him. Anders Pete found out his ancestral line has Marcus Davenport in it. Oof. Look, you make jokes. Marcus Davenport had 2 sacks this year. 400% increase, baby. We love it. Who is age affecting less in your opinion? Honey Badger, DeMario, or Camp DeMario? Not even close. No offense to Honey Badger. Honey Badger ain't what he was. Cam ain't what he was. Mario Davis is the weird ageless one, and even he is showing signs of age. I gave a great example of it. You want to see a sign of age with DeMario Davis? The Kyle Pitts throw at like the end of the second quarter, where Kyle Pitts gets to the sideline and catches it over the shoulders, a beautiful sideline throw. And Andres Pete and DeMario Davis is about 3 steps behind. You go back 3 years, he's not 3 steps behind. He's right there on the shoulder. Now, that does not mean that DeMario Davis did not play a fantastic season. He did. He was still, in my opinion, DeMario Davis was still probably a second-team All-Pro. He was still really freaking good. But he is diminishing. He is declining. Anybody that says he's not is not watching the tape. That does not mean he's bad, though. But he is starting the decline. You can see it. Even if he is your best defensive player, he is starting that path. And you have to imagine at 35 years old, he will be worse next year. So, and shout out to him, by the way. He had his most tackles ever with the New Orleans Saints this year. He tied a career high in sacks this year. Like, I love that for him. Believe it or not, he has now played more years in New Orleans than he did in New York. He's been here that long. 6 amazing years. But it's definitely starting to hit that point. Like, he's definitely becoming an aging backer. How did Trevor Penning win the starting job? Hope, prayers, faith, stuff about church on Sunday. The thing with him is, whether people want to admit it or not, Trevor Penning flashes good play. He just has not found a way to be consistent. Like, I wish he would go work with Duke Manyweather and all these other people. But I hope he figures it out. Look, Cesar Ruiz needed 3 years. Maybe Trevor Penning just needed 3 years. We'll see. We'll see. But Penning actually looked solid in camp. He didn't look great, but he looked a hell of a lot better than he did by the time they were benching him in the regular season. And then you talk about people being petty. I don't know if y'all noticed this, but last game of the season, they weren't even using him as the jumbo guy anymore. Like, that's where Dennis Allen had gotten to with him. We'll see what he is in year 3. You got to hope he figures it out. The Saints desperately need help along the offensive line. Desperately needs help. Got to find something. You feel better O-line coaches would help Penning? I do agree that better O-line coaches than Doug Marrone would help Trevor Penning. I do agree with that statement. So, what do you do with that? Well, doesn't seem like the Saints are going to go hire anybody, but we can hope. We can wait and see. But I think we've had good discussion tonight, y'all. I mean, we're getting right at 1 hour, so we got to wrap up. I've had a great time with y'all, and I hope y'all have had a great time as well. We will be back. We're going to do some stuff. If y'all have any players that you want scouting reports on, I'm going to try to start working on some of that stuff now. I can't guarantee we do a ton of scouting reports because they are just very time consuming. As always, the more you support the channel, the more I can do. But we will still have the podcast going on. Appreciate every single one of y'all. Join the Discord. Hit me up on Twitter. Hit me up on Facebook. We got the Who Dat Confessional Facebook pages up as well. You can send me messages there. Go straight to my phone. Who Dat, God bless. Catch you on the next podcast. And we will be covering a lot of draft, a lot of free agency, and hopefully some level of coaching changes. We'll see. Deuces.